In mid-2022, I had a really interesting experience. So, one of the agile coach in a large multinational insurance company asked me to do an agile training for the senior management. So, from my past experience, the management doesn't care about agile. And talking about agile to the senior management sometimes doesn't cut through. So the biggest obstacle in a lot of cases that I have experienced is their past bias. Many senior management, especially those who has already led a large multinational company, they have been successful. So if we talk about agile theories to them, they might come back with another theory, a theory of their own. And you might get into that dogmatic debate who has the better theories. So the first thing that I did in the training was to tell stories. And I want to remove their bias first, because otherwise, Agile might not sustain, Agile might not nurture in the organization. So the training was held in two models. So half of the training was held online, and then half of the training was held offline in person. This was mid last year. So I tell a story to the senior management about my personal experience when I went to Japan in 2019. I was invited by the product management group in Nissan to teach their product management group because Nissan was quite pissed off with the situation. They think they were the first car company in the world who invented electric cars. So they kind of pissed off because Tesla released it earlier than them. So Nissan has already got Nissan Leaf, but they kept it for 20 years. And the reason why they did that is because they're afraid to kill their own market, the gasoline-based car. So I was invited there, and I was invited to Yokohama, Japan. And because I'm such a Japanese food lover, the first thing that I did when I went to Japan is find the best ramen restaurant. So I went to this ramen bar, I ordered a ramen, and then when I ordered the ramen, I got the ramen. There were a lot of Japanese next to me. They were eating ramen, they were enjoying their ramen, but they were slurping. And I was confused because all this time, since I was in primary school, my mom kept on telling me, when you eat at the dining table, don't slurp, because in our culture, it's impolite. So at that moment, when I look around me, all of these Japanese eating ramen, slurping, I immediately judge them as impolite. How could the Japanese eat ramen slurping? This is impolite. I have my own bias about how we should eat. And then after I finished my ramen, I went back to the office the following day, and I shared this story to the person who invited me to Nissan, and he laughed at me. Because he said that in Japanese culture, slurping that ramen is actually a form of respect to the chef who has already cooked a beautiful ramen. So I shared this story, and I love sharing this story to a lot of senior management. And I could tell them about the ladder of inference. Some of you may have already heard the ladder of inference by Chris Argyris. Basically, the TLDR version of the ladder of inference is, if we keep on seeing the same thing over and over again, we might think that what we saw is the universal truth. We believe it, it becomes our belief. Now, the ladder of inference is actually cyclic, because at the top, our belief influence us what data, what information we want to see, right? And the bias just keeps on forming over and over again. So I didn't use this when I start the training with the senior management at this insurance company. And fast forward, which is early 2023, changes start to happen within this organization. And one of the biggest change in this organization is they start using the term the ramen perception whenever a senior management from the C-suite, like the CIO, the CEO, starts bringing their bias without validating those assumptions. And interestingly, this is one of the key tenets of Scrum, empiricism, right? But I didn't talk about those buzzwords when I started the training, but they start to embody it, they start to embrace it. And in fact, within this organization, within this company, they start believing facts, they don't use data, and interestingly, the senior management from the C-suite starts joining, some of them join the sprint review, some of them join the quarterly review, but they embrace it. So I have just told you a story on how I use a story to the senior management to change their behavior. Now, a lot of people think that a story is an analogy, and every time I went to trainings, whether that is online trainings, whether that is in-person training, many trainers like telling stories, but a lot of times what they're telling is analogies. So an analogy is describing a thing for another thing. There are 4 key elements that you need to be aware of when you want to create a story. The first thing is a scene. So if you have watched a movie, usually every movie starts with like a shot that tells you where the scene is. And by telling the scene, it helps people to understand the context. Where is the context? Was this in Japan? Was this at an insurance company? I work for a telco company. That story is about the senior management in insurance company. It might not cut through. It may. I may be able to take some of this. But setting the scene in the beginning of your story helps the audience, your audience, putting into perspective, they understand the context. So every story must start with a scene. It's engaging them, they understand the context of the story. And the second element that you need to have in the story is you. Now, a lot of stories don't put you in the story, and a lot of times I've found that it's not so powerful. When you put you yourself within that story, it creates trust with the audience. Because, oh, it's you who faced that situation. I feel you. We are connected emotionally as human beings. So you need to put yourself within those stories. And every story, if you have watched a lot of movies, there's usually a need that the character is facing, or a struggle that they're facing. In my case, with the senior management at this insurance company, I have a need to start changing their behavior. Now, you need to say that in your story. And most importantly, every story needs to come to a resolution. What's the ending? What do we want the audience to learn from this story? So a great story has a scene. It has you as the subject. And there is a need, a struggle that the subject, this character is facing, which is you. And also a resolution. What can the audience, the people you're interacting with, wants to learn? Now, a good story is only good for the audience when it's relatable. For example, I have this really interesting story. This was a few months ago, and this might not be relatable to you. It's a story when my son and my daughter is right here. They demand me to get prime drink because everyone at their school in Australia asked their parents, "Get us some prime." So I didn't know what prime is, and then I tried to accommodate them. I went to the local supermarket, I bought it, and then when I give it to them, they literally vomit, they puke. They said, "It tastes like medicine." And we made this story, we uploaded it to TikTok, and interestingly, there's 50,000 views with this story. But a lot of people who commented, who give a like, "Yeah, prime tastes like vomit," are people who has bought prime in the market where prime was sold. In Poland, maybe prime was not sold, so you won't be able to understand why is prime drink doesn't taste nice. So you need to know your audience. Who are you talking to? Would this story be relatable? A story only becomes powerful when it becomes relatable to the audience. In the case of the Prime story that we experienced, a lot of people gave a like, a lot of people give comments because they also agree. So when it's relatable, it becomes more powerful for the audience that you want to change their behavior. So understand your audience. Who are they? Are they the middle managers? Are they the senior managers? Are they technical people like software engineers? Are they from human resources? The reason why you need to understand who your audience is because you want to know what is important to them, and you want to find a twist, and you want to attack, you want to change their behavior with what is important to them. You need to know their cultural background, what's the do's and the don'ts, are they a homogeneous group, or are they a heterogeneous group? Right? Australia, where I currently work, where I'm currently based in, a lot of teams, a lot of companies are promoting diversity. It's quite a heterogeneous group. But whenever I went, let's say, to work with teams in South Korea, for example, they're quite homogeneous group. So these aspects sometimes is important because you want to know also what are their past pains within their culture or maybe their dark history, and you don't want to embed that in your story. So here is what I have learned from Agile transformation. So far, from the past 10 years, Agile transformation is hard, but not because the theory is hard, but because people are attached to their past behavior. As I have mentioned earlier in my talk, when we start promoting theories, a lot of time from my experience, I'm not sure about your experience, but from my personal experience, oftentimes we may get into dogmatic debates. And as coaches, consultants, scrum masters, when we get into that dogmatic debate, we might have already lost the battle. We might have already not gained our needs to bring influence to change behavior in their organization. So I personally think agility is all about new behaviors. And if people are still attached with their past behaviors, it might not cut through. And also, besides their past behavior, the organization, a legacy, might be constraining them to change their behavior. A lot of agile theory, a lot of agile speakers promote value. But if their organization, if their company still measure the team on the number of product backlog items that needs to be done, then they can't change their behaviors, right? So we need to influence the organization, the people within the organization, rather than starting to promote just the theories. So when we use theories, we connect at intellectual level, but when we tell stories, we connect with people at emotional level. And when we connect with people at emotional level, we might be able to start influencing people's behavior within the organization. We can embed whatever we want to, what is our goal within that organization. And when we connect with people with stories, when we are connected emotionally, people trust us more. And that is what I have experienced working with several organizations. I have started to change my strategy whenever I'm called to lead a company towards organization agility. And when we tell stories, interestingly, from my experience, it affects chemicals in our body. The first chemical that we affect when we tell stories is dopamine. Dopamine is that chemical that gives us the adrenaline. If you want to increase your dopamine, go bungee jumping. There's quite a lot in New Zealand. So I had this experience working with an East Europe-based financial institution. The case study was published in scrum.org website. But there is one aspect in that case study that was not published, which I think is really important. So I was called by the CTO of the company, and the CTO invited me to introduce Agile in the organization. I was asked to work with him for Agile transformation within the organization. So 3 months, we start sharing stories, we start influencing the organization, changing behaviors. People start to change their behaviors. However, the CTO, his name is Tomas. Tomas invited me into his room. He was worried. He didn't like the situation. He didn't like that people are embracing this. So he asked me to get into his room. You're anticipating, right? What's going to happen? Is Joshua's going to be fired? So that's how we can use stories to affect our dopamine, right? So a pause can create anticipation. What's going to happen to Joshua? Is he going to be fired? Tomas didn't like him. So Tomas didn't like the situation. Because there is no one carrying the flag forward. So he said, okay, you've done a great job, but now I want you to move out of the background, start mentoring people within my organization to carry this transformation forward. So storytelling using some techniques like a pause can affect your dopamine. It creates anticipation. And when people are anticipating, they're engaged. What's next? What's going to happen next? What's going to happen, right? So a pause is one of the techniques in storytelling that you can use to create that anticipation. Storytelling also can affect your oxytocin. So I have a story. This is before COVID happened, so between 2012 and 2017. I travel a lot to the United States of America. When I counted, I think I travel at least 4 times every year. And I form a bad habit when I travel to the US. The stingy part of me tells me, avoid going to the restaurant. Because I came from Australia, and we're just not used to paying tips. Why don't you just put the price there and don't let us figure out how much tips we need to give you, whether that is 10%, 20%, or 30%. It's so confusing. So I built this habit of eating fast food because I don't need to pay tips. So in the morning, I would go to Dunkin' Donuts, and then in the afternoon, I would go to Starbucks. Not just the coffee, but the sugary drink from Starbucks. And then at night, I would go to Taco Bell, and this keeps on repeating. Every time I go to the US, this is my habit. Until at one point, not only I have sleep deprivation, I got collapsed. So I was in a state of coma. My body was not in good shape. I got a heart attack. So for 2 days, I was in a state of coma. I needed to be taken into the hospital. But my wife was there with me. And now every time I have a speaking engagement like this one and the previous one to Scrum Day Europe, my wife comes with me to ensure that I keep a healthy habit when I travel. So when we tell stories like this, we as human beings are connected at emotional level. You feel me. You feel my struggle. Wow, an unhealthy habit, eating all of those fast foods, right? So we can tell stories to our organizations. Maybe Pavel, the previous speaker, talks about failures, right? Any past failures, you can use that to connect to people at emotional level. And when we tell stories like this, we are affecting our oxytocin. Storytelling can affect your endorphin. I had this experience working with an organization. I was in the C-suite meeting, and then the C-suite asked a very interesting question during the meeting. So we have spent a lot of money for agile transformation. We hired a lot of expensive consultants. We have sent people to trainings. They are certified. But how do we know that we are agile? And then I just, the silly me, I just answered because I'm like a pure agile practitioner. I said, value, measure value, right? That's what agile is about. It's about delivering value. And then they said, it's too hard. Measuring value is too hard. And then they start coming up with these silly metrics, like how many people are on Jira subscriptions? Maybe if more people in our organization are on Jira subscription, then we know we are agile, and let's work with HR to ensure that more people in our company are on Jira subscriptions. And then they even come up with metrics. Oh, we hired a lot of expensive consultants from the Big Four and from MBB. Let's measure how many expensive consultants we fire each year. So I made this into a video. And interestingly, on LinkedIn, and I'm really glad 170 people give a laughing emoji. What worries me most is if I uploaded this video and people didn't give a laughing emoji, probably they didn't get it. Probably they think, oh yeah, that's the reality that we're in. But luckily, more people who give a laughing emoji. And funny stories like this can affect the endorphin chemicals in our body, and endorphins can make us more creative. It can make us think more outside of the box. So don't only tell sad stories inside the organization. You can tell funny stories, jokes, and it helps people to be more creative. And that's why I created another channel. So Ava mentioned about the Scrum Master in Black channel. I kind of branched out. Wow, this is so cool. A lot of people are actually laughing about this. Let's create another channel, the Agile Comedy channel. And in fact, there was a lady who is based in Sydney. She said, I've been attending a lot of Scrum trainings, Agile trainings, but when I watch your comedy videos, I understand what Agile is about. It's interesting that I can understand about Agile just by comedies and skits. So this is a proof that funny stories can help people become more creative. It opens up a lot of possibility. People can explore more. So you may be asking right now, when should we use stories? My simple principles is, if you have a very important aspect that you want the organization to know, but that seems to be too difficult for them to digest or to embrace, maybe you can use stories. And I have another story. When I worked with a team, this is still the same team that I told earlier. This is a team inside that large insurance company. So they have attended the Professional Agile Leadership EBM training. 30 people were sent to this training. 1 year later, after they have been trained, nothing happens. There was no EBM dashboard. They were not measuring value. They liked the idea. They've read the EBM guides from scrum.org. They didn't get it. They've got the training. They've got the theories. And in fact, I have to connect with another professional Scrum trainer, Mark Waffle, who is based in the US. And these guys was based in Southeast Asia, so GMT +7. So in their morning time, that would be around midnight for Mark Waffle. And I have to negotiate with Mark, wait, would you stay up at midnight to teach these people PAL EBM? And even though there is sacrifice from Mark to stay up late on midnight to teach these 30 people on professional agile leadership EBM, nothing happens. So I tell stories to this group of people at one point when our family went to Exmouth. So this is around, if you look at the Google map, this is around 13 hours from Perth. So we have to split the trip into two. So we stop over mid-level at Geraldton, and from Geraldton to Exmouth, it takes another 8 hours. But what I didn't really realize is from Geraldton to Exmouth, even though at Exmouth it was very beautiful, it's a very beautiful place. If you go to Western Australia, go visit Exmouth, it's a very beautiful place. It's all desert. So when we were in Geraldton, my wife and I, we filled up the tank, the fuel full. So we have an SUV, so if it's full tank, we can drive for another 800 kilometers. So when the dashboard in the car said that with the amount of fuel left, you can only drive for 200 kilometers, and there was a petrol station, my wife told me, fill up the tank now. But I said, why? We can still drive for another 200 kilometers. I'm going to drive until there's only 50 kilometers that I can use with this fuel left. And I didn't listen to my wife. I underestimated the situation. 100 kilometers left. I look at Google Map, there's no petrol station nearby. And then with that situation, I have to pivot. I have to change strategy. We literally turned off the AC, the air conditioner, and the kids were complaining because, it's so hot, because Exmouth, it's all desert from Geraldton to Exmouth. It's so hot. But this is the only way we can survive until the next petrol station. And luckily, when the amount of fuel left is only for 20 kilometers, there was a petrol station. It was 3 times more expensive than normal petrol, but we just bought it anyway because we were desperate. So the story there is to listen to your wife. But the most important thing is with measurements. Measurements should inform us what to do. What's our next action that we need to do? Some of you may have already seen this, this graphic, and a lot of people have read the EBM guide. So using that story, I tell the teams, your time to market metrics, those are like your speedometers in the car. So these are a lot of speed metrics, a lot of Kanban metrics, a lot of DevOps metrics, like how often do you release to production, what's your lead time, what's your cycle time, what's your time to resolve issues. And the ability to innovate, a lot of teams didn't understand what's ability to innovate metrics. This is basically anything that's impeding the team, the organization, to deliver value faster. In the case of the story when I went to Exmouth, did you check your car? When was the last time your car went to service? Is there enough fuel? What's impeding you to achieve value faster at the current speed rate. And current value, when you look at Google Maps, is that blue dot. Where are you right now? Should you pivot when the dashboard tells you otherwise? Would you still believe your gut feeling? And the unrealized value, this is the future goals you want to achieve. This is your target, your future aspiration. And interestingly, starting from mid this year, they start to embrace it. Oh, that's what it's about. Why does it seem that the EVM guides looks too cryptic? This is simple, and a lot of teams inside this insurance company starts making their EVM dashboard as they understand it. So this is a story how I use story to engage the team in a difficult concept, but it's really important. In this case, it's really important for the organization to start seeing visible metrics. And I keep telling the team, without these metrics, you might not know whether you need to pivot, how much fuel left, should you go find, like maybe turn a little bit, deviate a little bit to find the nearest petrol station. You're just walking like in the dark, right? But with visible metrics, you should have information whether you have made the right decision. If you didn't make the right decision, should you pivot? And stories work well in remote contexts. My experience before COVID is I'm a visual person. I like drawing. In my trainings, I draw. But mostly before COVID, all of these trainings are in-person trainings. So I don't use PowerPoint slides like a lot of trainers do. I enjoy it. But I found that in a remote context, people's situation might be different. Sometimes people might be walking, they have their headphones on. They might not know what visuals you're presenting in that Zoom session or in that Microsoft Teams session, but they're listening, right? So during COVID, I start improving my storytelling skills, how to use audio to engage the participants within this remote training context. A lot of people told me, I'm not good in storytelling. I don't believe that. It takes practice, yes, but everybody have a story to tell. And if you use stories, it's so powerful. I've done it several times. I've done it in person context. I've done it in a remote context. You're engaging people emotionally. You'll gain their trust. And as coaches, consultants, scrum masters, that's what you need, right? You need their trust. Why should I follow you? Right? You need to bind that trust. And everybody have a story to tell. So now I'm asking you, after this session, after this conference, collect all of the experience you had, right? And then put together the elements of stories. Where was the scene? Where was this situated? And put you as the subject in that story, because having you as the subject bonds trust with people inside the organization. What conflict you want to explain, and what's the resolution? What do you want the audience to learn from this? And you can map out to agile practices. This is what I've been doing. So like the story when I went to Exmouth, I mapped this. When I want the team, the organization to understand about EBM, I'm going to pick this story. When I want to explain the importance of not bringing bias or empiricism, I use that ramen perception story. You may even use stories how you're stuck in traffic, maybe to explain flow or Kanban. Map out those stories, have a collection, have a library of stories that you can use to engage people within the organization. Define the context you think it will be relevant to tell the story. When is the right time to tell the stories? Sometimes you need to know the right timing to tell stories. Who do you think should listen to this story? Is it the senior management? Is it the team members, engineers? And what hormone do you think are you affecting when you tell these stories? Is it going to affect the dopamine, oxytocin, etc.? And don't forget, you need to make your story personal. And this is very interesting. I created a podcast episode because this was in last year, September 2021, because I was so frustrated with a lot of Scrum Masters around me, because this was still around COVID. They have this behavior of collecting certifications, not necessarily for learning, they just like collecting the badges. And I was so frustrated with that situation. And usually when I'm frustrated, I either make a YouTube videos or create a podcast, which is quite productive. And in this case, because I was so frustrated with a lot of Scrum Masters and Agile coaches go on certification hunt, certification collection, I created this story, my 5 tips on becoming an awesome Scrum Master without collecting certification. I didn't have much intention, I didn't have much expectation, who's going to listen to this, who's going to be impacted by this. I was just releasing my frustration until mid-June this year, someone named Kelsey, who's based in the US, and I like getting feedback like this, and I've already asked Kelsey, can I share your stories in a lot of engagement, in a lot of trainings, in conference that I will be presenting? And she said, yes, you should do that. I want a lot of more people to be impacted or influenced by my story. So Kelsey is based in the US. She's a soccer coach, and she's a teacher. She aspired to be a Scrum Master. Now, a lot of people around her told her, just game it. Just fake it until you make it. Just collect a lot of Agile certifications. People won't know. As long as you have a lot of badges, people won't know. Just fake it. And then she listened to my podcast, and she had a different perspective. She had a different view. And now she's motivated. It turns out a lot of skills that she has as a soccer coach can be beneficial for teams, even from technology team or for engineering teams. And at the end, she didn't listen to the voices around her that told her to collect certifications. So my closing for this talk is, people may not remember all of the Agile theories you tell them, but people will remember how the stories make them feel. That lasts much longer, and that is more impactful. So I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting me to Poland. I have collected a lot of stories during my stay here in Poland. So I have a bunch more libraries now. So last week, my family and I were in Krakow. We visited Warsaw. We collected a lot of stories. And I'm going to use that for a lot of engagement within teams, in speaking engagement, or in training. Thanks to you, I have a lot more stories now.
Thank you. Thank you, Josh. That was an amazing story about stories. And you taught us that we need to make a story personal. And the question from Piotr is, are you cheating sometimes, adding this and that to make a story more impactful?
To make the stories impactful, what I have learned is the intonation, how you say it, how you explain it. You may add a pause. You can increase your voice, how you tell it. That creates more drama. That's probably how I add the story more interesting. But the story is as it is. Because if the story is not genuine, then people might not believe you, and people might not gain your trust. So it needs to be genuine.
Thank you. So the question connected with that from Marcin is, can you try and make interesting and emotional a user story, which is like, as X, I want Y to achieve Z. Can you do that?
In relation to user story, if you have read the book written by Kent Beck, he actually explained that user story is not about the format. I think there was someone along the way who added that format as I want, so that. But actually, user story, according to the first adopter of XP, Kent Beck, Ron Jeffries, Martin Fowler, is about a user literally sitting down in front of the engineers telling stories. How is their situation difficult and how they want a feature in the product to make their life more productive or to make their life easier. So if you don't have a user telling the stories, according to Kent Beck, if I may quote him, you don't have user story. You just have a format, but you don't have user story. So yeah, invite your user, listen to them, let them tell stories. It's not about the format, it's literally about the user telling stories.
Thank you. And the last one is about the context of we do not have time for this, stupid stories because Teams is busy and we need to do this stuff, the serious stuff, and now stories. Why you can resolve this one? How can you comment?
Yes, I do agree. That's why knowing context, knowing when you should tell it is really important. Like the case when I work with team who already went to PAL EBM training. 1 year later, nothing happens. So it's important for the organization. And we don't want to use carrot and stick and push and force the team because we might be going backwards that way. So you need to understand when, is it critical? You can use a lot of opportunities. In my case, when I tell that story about when I went to Exmouth to explain EBM, we literally create a session. This is important. We are inviting you to this session, why this is important. Sometimes if it's important, you can make a session to tell a story to raise the awareness in the organization or in the team.
I'm definitely looking for the stories during our after party
Yes.
today. Thank you very much, Joshua Partogi.
Thank you, everybody, for attending my session.